Namaste. Welcome to Shakti Punch, Mitros, Mitronis, Mitronas. I am your host, Pranav. On this show, we go together hand in hand on a cosmic voyage to unravel the mysteries of reality through a dharmic Indic lens. We're talking reality, divinity, praxis right here. We're doing it together with my faithful co-host and producer, Adi Parige.
What's good? What's good?
Great to see you, Adi. Let's get into it, guys. We have 426,875 years, 131 days, several hours, and even several more minutes left in the Kali Yuga. Make of that what you will. Use your time wisely. Do whatever you want. Twiddle your thumbs, twiddle your japa, but that's the time on the clock. Do with it as you will. Today, I want to just talk a little bit about something that I've been thinking of. Like, I've been reading before bed past few nights. I've been actually cracking open the Vedas, a little light bedtime reading. Having crazy dreams now. And the Vedas are really beautiful. And one thing that I've realized is that through all dharmic literature, even the most heady philosophical things like the Yoga Vashishta, all the way through the Puranas, all the Itihasas, the Rishis who composed all of these texts, all of these discourses, all of these tales, all of these stories, the compilers, they're all artists. That is what they are at their core, is they are artists. These are people who were constructed, who were creations of consciousness, right? Who then mind consciousness, go inward to basically extract gems of insight and wisdom, right? And these are things that helps us understand the natural order of things, which is called Rita, right? Rita is the natural order of things, and that is a concept which is very closely tied to Dharma. Dharma is the upholding of Rita, which is actually just the natural order of things. And when I was reading the Vedas, I'm looking at what they're doing, and these aren't just poets. They're actually like poet scientists, right? These are people who are using their knowledge of Rita, of understanding and discerning the natural order of things, to construct ideas of Dharma, right? So they didn't just start with wanting to make laws, right? Actually, it started with them understanding the natural world around them, wind, fire, all of these things, water, lightning, and constructing a conception of that world, which ultimately then constituted the laws of Dharma, right? And to me, that's fascinating, but they are poets. More than anything, first and foremost, they are poets. You read all these hymns from all the Vedas, they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. They're using metaphor, and they're full of ecstasy and passion and devotion. Everything is in verse, and it's all full of love. You know what I mean? All these verses are there. They're just odes. I love fire, right? Oh, it's extolling all the praises, right? It's extolling all the virtues, offering the highest, most profound praises to, it starts with things that are very elemental, wind, fire, water, etc., right? Soma, right? They're giving homage to this substance, this other substance which has appeared in consciousness along with us, right? And how they've combined with it and they've taken it and it's helped them to achieve these ecstatic states of insight as well. So they're also paying homage to that, right? And it's they're mining consciousness for insights that they are in awe of, not as something that they possess or that they create, but as something that is possessing them. Right. And it's them expressing it with love. And to me, I think it drives home the fact, because out of all of these things, what did they do then? They started constructing rituals. Right. And this is poetry in motion, not to use a horrible, dumb cliche like that, but it's poetry in a very concrete form. These rituals, which are there to then also express the devotion, express the love. Right. And the thing is, look, when you sit in front of a fire, it's an amazing experience. Actually, you sit in front of the fire and you were like, wow, this is a portal. You know what I mean? This is a thing that is conveying a sacrifice forward, right? Conveying it to another realm of reality. You're seeing that, and it's incredible. And to be a human being, what I've realized from reading the Rishis, to be somebody, devotion is not a rote activity of just doing, it's not just a procedural rote activity. It is a creative act of revealing the true self. And that's what I feel like any art is trying to do. It is uncovering the reality of a thing, right? No matter how small or how large it is, it's always doing that, right? We're always taking the disjunctions that we're seeing in life, reconciling them through a dialectic process, which requires insight and inscape, you going within to, again, we're all mining those gems as creative beings, even as if you're not an artist, right? No matter what it is that you're doing, you're always having to go in to solve a problem, to find order in things, right? And that's what these people are doing. They understood that to be human was an inherently creative act, I believe. And I think that's something that we can all kind of embrace no matter what it is that we do, whether we're artists or we're mathematicians or scientists or whatever it is. We can really embrace this as a concept of whatever it is, we can make it into a creative act. And I mean, the Vedas, I don't know how much of the Vedas you've read. I think you've read quite a few.
I read a very good, but a very academic translation of the Rig Veda.
Right.
So obviously, the academic application of the words in the Rig Veda is going to slightly differ from a religious application, right? That you're hearing from a priest. And I think both are valid because application 3,000 years later also matters.
I mean, it's fascinating to me
and the people who are doing the amazing translation work of figuring out also this archaic version of Sanskrit that is not even the Sanskrit in the Rig Veda. So I think both are super valid and amazing.
To me, this is the most primordial form of art that we're dealing with here. And 100%. It's fascinating that this is still the basis of a religion that, 3,000 to 5,000 years later is still alive and kicking and very vibrant and creating new poems. I think in order to be to be a priest, to be a pandit, to be a guru, to be a rishi, you have to be an artist, right?
I think there's something so key here in what you're saying, especially really underlining the word artist.
Yeah.
Because some people will maybe run with that and be like, creation, they're the ones creating. But that's actually where the difference is between pretty much every other religion in the world, well, maybe in the West, and Eastern philosophy particularly, is that it is insight induced.
Yes, 100%.
The realizations and the stories and everything comes because we looked within, not because we received it externally.
Right. Well, I mean, the Vedas are considered Shruti, right? Which is that which is revealed, right?
I think it's revealed through self-inquiry.
Exactly. Yes. So that's what I was about to get to. Yes, exactly. And
I listen, Pranav.
I know you do.
I listen to your podcast. I might produce it too.
It would be hilarious if you just put headphones in while I'm doing this and you're just like on your phone or you're listening to music. But I mean, that's exactly right? Is that it comes from insight. It's all about revelation. Every creative act is an act of revelation.
100%.
We all like to think of it as an act of construction, of we're building something and we're the creators of this. No, it's actually an act of revealing something, right? Looking within, and looking within, looking outside, looking within, but always peering deeply into a thing to reveal the truth of a thing. And that's what the Rishis were doing. The Rishis are the artists. That's what they are. They're all poets. They're all vagabond poets, actually.
I think their notorious and amazing and infamous temper is also that kind
of an artist.
Temperament of like cursing someone.
Exactly.
You can talk to any artist. We have that temperament,
dude.
Right?
They're always cursing people if they interrupt their meditations or whatever, or if they get a sacrifice wrong or something. They're very temperamental beings. We're temperamental beings as creative people, totally. And I think they really were artists, dude. And
amazing.
They're just incredible poets. And the Saptarishis, and of course, there's many different phases of Saptarishis. And you brought up an interesting point, Adi, which is that it's not even just that they were just individual poets or artists doing their thing.
These are houses.
These are like houses of it, right?
It's like fashion houses. So what I was saying before we recorded was that it's like a fashion house or like a painter who has, or sculptors. This happened a lot in like schools of sculpt, or even in schools of philosophy.
And schools of poetry.
And schools of poetry, right? Which is you have one poet who kind of sets the formula or the foundation or the style, the aesthetic.
Yes.
And then from there, the descendants and the students, they carry that tradition, right? So I think when we think about the fact that, different mandalas of the Rig Veda are written by different rishis.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And it's important to also remember that this is a collation of multiple different poetry houses coming together.
With one editor-in-chief, which was Ved Vyasa.
100%.
Right? He was the compiler. That's what his name meant. He was the compiler of these things.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think with Veda Vyasa, because I think he might be the most intriguing figure in just dharmic everything.
Yeah.
Because he's the compiler.
Yeah.
And to me, there's some sort of like connection to the way, you know, theater people talk about Shakespeare here, right? Which is Shakespeare. It's very possible he was this one man.
Yeah.
Obviously, but it's also possible he was the face of many.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, again, that plays in, I don't know, this is very speculative, but Vedavyasa, because he also appears for thousands of years
He's in thousands and Yuga, he's there, right? But one thing that we did learn in the Yoga Vashishta, right, is that in every epoch, a new Vedvyas will pop up, right? A new Indra will pop up. A new Shiva will pop up, actually, right? These are all beings that are reincarnated in different forms, right? We remember, maybe it was... Hiranyakashipu, or who is his older brother? Hiranyaksha, who after his beef with Vishnu or whatever, I think it was him, and I could be wrong about this, guys, was then granted grace and was then said, hey, listen, you know what? In the next epoch, you're going to be Indra. You will have the title of Indra. These are actually titles more than they are individual personalities, right?
Wow.
And so every story that we're reading about them in, we're dealing with maybe perhaps different Vedvyasas in each of these different stories, right? Because
Which funnels down to bhakti as well, right? And the individual's relationship with a god as well. It's like Indra to one is not necessarily going to be the same Indra to the next.
Of course, yes.
Or Ganesha.
Yeah.
I think Ganesha is a fantastic example because wildly revered around India and prayed to, but the next door neighbor prays differently to Ganesha.
Of course,
and asks of different things. And
you know, people use different poems too that they recite in their honor, right? Different shlokas, stotrams, all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just I mean, I don't know. I was just kind of in awe of it because, again, the past few nights I've been reading the Vedas, and you know, a lot of it is very abstracted things from what we're used to now as modern Hindus, right? We're not reading the Vedas necessarily and doing puja around them necessarily, right? Like you, me, our workaday Hindus. But everything that we're reading is derivative of these works. You know what I mean? And
for anyone interested of learning about people who still do practice Vedas very authentically, I would recommend reading Vedic Voices.
Vedic Voices,
and I'll put the title of the author's name below because I'm forgetting right now. But it's a really great insight, especially for any Telugu people from the Godavari area.
Okay.
That's part of the tradition that's been held there.
Love it, dude. Yeah. Love it.
We're at 13.
Yeah, I think let's keep it moving. Let's get back into the Yoga Vashishta, guys. Basically, we're now on the Book of Liberation, right? Which is on liberation in the Venkatesananda translation of the Yoga Vashishta. And in the Yoga Vashishta, in this book, at the beginning of the chapter, Vashishta conceptualizes the universe, right, as not reality. We already know this, right? Nothing that we're experiencing is the actual reality. But I thought this was fascinating, right? It is ignorance. Actually, everything that we're experiencing is ignorance because it is the veiling of Brahman, right? And it is the veiling of everything that helps us realize that this is all rooted in the ultimate supreme consciousness of Brahman. So this is all ignorance. And he said something really fascinating at the beginning on the Book of Liberation, where he describes it as the universe is the sacrifice of Kali, which is time, to the infinite consciousness of Brahman, right? So think about that. The universe, as we know it, the known universe, is actually a sacrifice of time to consciousness. And to me, that's a concept that we could just meditate on probably for hours. I can't for hours. I don't have the attention span. I'm a highly imperfected being, right? But to me, that was a total brain melter when I read that. He describes it as time, the universe is a sacrifice in the begging bowl of Kali made to the infinite consciousness. And I thought that was just a fascinating and beautiful thing. But what I really do want to talk about is that this is ignorance. And so what we're talking about is the sacrifice of ignorance to consciousness by time, right? We are sacrificing ignorance. And when we talk about ignorance, it's like we can have a value judgment of it as being bad or good or whatever, but it's actually just the fact of what our reality is ignorance, because it is the veiling of the true ultimate reality of Brahman. And so what makes this ignorance? What is it about this that makes this ignorance? Going back to it, it's when consciousness objectifies itself to regard itself as an object of observation. Again, the subject-object relation materializes, and thus the veil of ignorance is born, right? And we can't forget that what we're talking about here, everything that we're experiencing is a desire of consciousness to experience itself, and that requires ignorance, right? That requires a false construction, then, of the self to behold the self. The mirror is not real. We are real, right? But we behold ourselves in the mirror. But the mirror itself is actually not real. And maybe that's a way of thinking about it. That is the ignorant thing, right? So everything that has been created by this infinite consciousness is itself ignorance. And it seems like a weird thing, and Rama himself is puzzled by it because Vashishta goes on to say everything. He's as he do in here. Everything he lists off everything. He's like, all of that is ignorance. And within that are the deities themselves. And Rama says, he's very puzzled. He says, why would you say that even the gods, Vishnu, Shiva, etc., are part of this ignorance, right? And we start to then come across the concept, first of all, of Chit Ananda. Chit Ananda, which means existence, consciousness, bliss. Everything is the basis of the next thing and is a reflection of it and is constitutive of it, right? Existence is the thing, right? And this is the quality of Brahman as we know it, right? Chit Ananda. And it is beyond comprehension and thought, but the way that we do conceptualize it is as Chit Ananda. Existence is the first thing. And what is the nature of existence? Is consciousness. And what is the nature of that consciousness? Is bliss. Right? And that is the one thing that we're all attempting to grasp and apprehend through meditation, self-inquiry, slaying the ignorance, the roots of ignorance of this tree, right? To behold the true reality. And whenever we catch a glimpse, it is that kind of silence. It is that mindlessness, the no mind rather, right? And the first conceptualization of consciousness in this attempt to experience itself is threefold, right? Through the subtle, the middling, and the gross. And these are the three gunas, right? And the three gunas, as we know, are sattva, rajas, tamas, right? And we like to think of them hierarchically, although there's a great case to make that they're not actually hierarchical, right? But sattva is the ultimate good, right? And that is that when you're sattvic, that is you're not going to be born again, right? And these are the qualities of equanimity, of peace, bland food. It's just like it's is little activity, but there is immense inward activity, right? Because in order to fend off all those other things, requires great, immense inner strength, right? And inner power. And then, of course, the second is rajas, which is that of activity. It's the spice, ambition, desire, all that. And then tamas, which is inertia, ignorance, darkness, foolishness, madness, insanity, basically, right? Death, you can think of, decay, all of those things. And it's so funny because, first of all, there is a question of evil, right? In the Western religions, there is a very clear concept of evil and not evil. But that doesn't really exist in dharmic thinking. You don't really, all you hear about are things that are adharmic. And what are things that are adharmic? Really, things that are adharmic are things that are out of balance with the three gunas, right? You want a balance of all three gunas, actually. That's actually what it's about, right? And so what is considered evil is actually things that are just an imbalance of the gunas, right? Something that is too tamasic or too rajasic is itself something that is evil, right? Or that leads to evil deeds, rather. But anyway, these are the three gunas, are the first things that are conceptualized by consciousness. And these three gunas are what constitute Prakriti, which is nature. And that's everything that we are experiencing in this reality, right? This is the domain of Shakti and Shakta, right? This is the dynamic representation of Brahman, essentially, right? This is what we're experiencing. This is the divided consciousness, the divided thing, the nature that we're experiencing. And this is what constitutes the universe as we know it. And the universe, according to Vashishta, is actually just the skin of ignorance, right? That is the flesh of ignorance. But he then goes on to say that these three gunas are then subdivided into 9, because each guna then has its own three gunas within itself of how they are determined and categorized. And I thought this was fascinating. And what we're really learning about here is how the gods evolved, right? What are the actual origins of the gods in consciousness on a more kind of concrete level? Because we've already discussed previously in the Yoga Vishishta that everything is just a blurp of consciousness, a burp, a belch, a blurp. I like blurp, actually.
Blurp is fantastic.
Blurp is fine. It's just a blurp of consciousness. It's like a little bubble of consciousness, and that's how things are created, including the gods, the universes, the planets. And so he goes on to say that the sattvic part of this ignorance are the sages, the ascetics, the perfected ones, the dwellers of the netherworld. We can interpret that as being the asuras. The celestials, those are like the devas. And then the gods, right? Which we can interpret as Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Shiva, right?
And they're all sattvic, is what.
And they are all sattvic, right? And but within that, remember, we're subdividing now within the Gunas, right? So these are these are the sattvic part of ignorance, right? But within them, they're dividing those down again into 3 Gunas. The celestials and the dwellers of the underworld, and I found this fascinating, represent tamas, right? So that's like the devas, actually. That's the yakshas, that's the asuras, the rakshasas. These are all the celestial classes of beings. The demons are also considered part of this, as well as the gods are also considered tamas, right? Or I guess with the devas, we would call them, right?
Yeah, devas, yeah. That's fascinating.
It is fascinating. But then in the middle, the rajasic reflection of Prakriti comes in the form of sages, right? The rishis, the sages, and then the gods are the sattvic beings, right? Now, all of these various 3 beings, whatever their essential nature is, are all eligible for the sattvic life in a sense, right? But it just so happens that they are constructed, the very essence of being a demon or a god or a demigod, I guess we can say, is tamasic. You know what I mean? And you understand that when you think about all of the little stories and battles we hear between the asuras and the devas, right?
100%.
And neither of them are given particular, I mean, they are kind of given favor in many of the stories because the devas are always going and whining to Brahma, and then Brahma's like, ask Vishnu, and Vishnu's like, okay, yeah, I'll handle this for you, you know?
But just because you have access doesn't actually mean that you're any different than...
Right.
Which is really interesting in this case, right? Because so many asuras as well are bhakti-driven.
Absolutely.
And have deep relationships with the gods.
Well, their own preceptor, Shukracharya, is the son of Brahma, right? Yeah. That's who their resident priest is, right? Their hotar or whatever. And then the gods are sattva, right? And to be sattvic means you're never to be born again. You're going to live out this epoch, but you're never going to have to worry about being reincarnated and having to suffer, right? And with this, in terms of reincarnation, I think it's fascinating because we're really left with a sort of conundrum at an intermediate level of thinking about all of this stuff, especially within Advaita, which is, we're hearing about, listen, you should abandon all this so you're never having to be reborn again. And then what you can imagine that's like is something beyond your comprehension, but it's not you even. It's just like, you don't really know. And then you're kind of confronted with this question of like, well, is it better to live a life where suffering is included, or maybe even all of it? Or is it better to not exist? Right? And that's what we see in terms of the devas and the asuras, right? Because these are people who are actually, why are they tamasic? Because they're completely steeped in the inertia of, in a sense, abundant materiality, in a sense, right? They have everything, and thus they're actually a sort of easily agitated group of people in some ways. People, I call them, beings, you know? But I find it interesting because the sages are humans, right? The rishis are human beings, right? But they're the ones who are actually most prime, even more than the gods themselves, to achieve the state of moksha, right? To achieve liberation, to achieve the sattvic state, which then allows you to attain to moksha. And I think that's very fascinating to me. I don't know. I mean, to me, this is kind of where I concluded it because this was a pretty long section.
Dude, that is mind-blowing, though. Because, like, so many things come to mind, but, like, Jaya and Vijaya, right? Mm-hmm. They're the guardians of the gate to Lord Venkateswara. Right. Right? To the celestial ocean on which he resides, right? And I'm forgetting exactly what it was, and we have talked about this, but because they didn't let someone of importance in, Vishnu gave them a choice, basically, which is you can either live 7 lifetimes but you won't know my name, or something like that, or you will live 3 lifetimes and you will be my sworn enemy, and I'll defeat you, but within 3 lifetimes you can be back. But it's interesting because they are devas, Jaya and Vijaya, right? I mean, I would assume they're devas, and then they're kind of going and being reincarnating as asuras. So it shows this kind of like
they are equated, right? They are equal. They're equal. There's an equality there's a moral equality between them, actually. 100%. Right?
Another thing that came to mind that I thought was really interesting reminded me of something you said in the very early episodes about how maybe this is just prior to Vishwaswarup, the form of Krishna that Krishna shows. Yeah. Right? and he's like, you can't understand this.
Yes, you can't behold it.
You cannot behold it.
Yeah.
You will not be able to. So there are so many venues to trying to essentially contend with what you can't understand. And that's so related, I feel, to this idea of just like ignorance.
Like the best he could do for Arjuna was just like, well, here's just everything.
Yeah.
Here's everything, and not just everything on a material level of here's all the planets and all the people and all this, but here's also time, right? Because he also shows him the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra, right? And he shows him previous lifetime births and future births and things like that. He's just like, well, here's everything that you can look at, right? But it's still just a fraction of what my actual resplendence actually is, my true opulence. Yeah, I mean...
It's very similar to what you were talking about.
I think it is a little bit, right? Because it's a fascinating thing to think that the demons and the gods are not necessarily any different, right? They are in their characters in some ways because the Asuras are a bit pesky. Their offspring, which are the Rakshasas, right, are... they want to disturb the sacrifices. They're flinging bloody meat at the sacrificial fires and stuff like that.
Some of them are the sons of the people who start the sacrificial fires. Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha are the sons of Kashyapa.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it's crazy.
All they are is a reflection of one particular quality of existence, and that's the thing that needs to be actually, I think, can't be overstated, is that these are things that are just a reflection of a quality that exists in Prakriti, which itself is something that has emanated from the three gunas, right? And because it emanates from the three gunas, Prakriti is always going to be, everything in it can be categorized according to the three gunas, essentially. Wow. Heady stuff.
Heavy stuff.
Heavy and heady stuff. I think that's a good place to stop. Where are we at on time?
27 minutes.
Okay, good to go. Guys, this has been Shakti Punch. Don't forget, we do have a YouTube. We would love you to subscribe on YouTube here. Click that subscribe, comment, keep sharing. I'm loving all the comments that we're getting on all these videos. I'm loving the growth. We have a Patreon. We have put some money in the hundi. It's very cheap. We have $1.08 category for people, as well as a $5.04 category for people who want to be, who can afford to be a little bit more generous to our efforts. Any little bit that you can contribute means a lot to us. Thank you so much for joining us here again. This is our 11th episode, I believe.
Yep.
We're so proud to be doing this. We love doing this. And don't forget to DM us if you have any questions or questions that you have for us or things that you want to hear us talk about. Like, we're totally open to that. We love you guys. Thank you. Om Namah Shivaya.